Welcome to Total Body Cellular Reset. How to use essential oils to cleanse, repair, and reprogram your body on a cellular level. And I'm just going to read something off. This is required for school. Thank you for coming to my class today. I wanted to let you know that you'll be receiving an email in the future asking you to verify your attendance at this class. The email will be titled, "Please respond class attendance verification for Jessica Davis, Total Body Cellular Reset," or it might say biology. The survey is 5 questions long and should only take you a minute or 2 to complete. Your email address will only be used for the purpose of this survey and will not be shared for any other purposes. I'm in school to be a naturopathic educator. It's part of a program to become a naturopathic doctor, but this is the educator portion, so they want to teach us. They want us to practice teaching our naturopathic lessons to the public, which you all are my public, so thank you for being guinea pigs. The agenda for today is Meet the Cell. So we're going to be talking very briefly about basic cell biology. Then we're going to go into the cell receptor sites and what those are. Then we'll go into the essential oil protocol on how to reset the cellular receptors. And then if you have any questions, there'll be time for that at the end. Okay, so the health of our cells determines the quality of our lives and the health of our bodies. And our physical body is made up of a community of 3 trillion cell citizens. As their mayor, would you be reelected? And this is just something to kind of think about as we're moving through the lesson. During my nutrition class, the instructor phrased this question to us, and it was just like, it just stuck with me. It's like, am I doing the best for my body and for all of the little beings that live in it? So let's meet our cell citizens. And this is a throwback to high school biology. So I try to find the close. I don't think these kids are high school age, but maybe close. So these are the cell organelles. There's the nucleus, the Golgi complex, microtubules, vacuoles, endoplasmic reticulum, centrioles, mitochondria, lysosomes, ribosomes, and the plasma membrane, amongst many other things that are inside the cell. So we're going to be going over each of these very briefly, kind of high level. If you have any questions at the end, feel free to ask me, but I just wanted to go through this really quick so that we understand the basic biology of the cell, so that when we get into the cell receptors and the essential oil protocol to reset the cell receptors, you'll understand kind of why we're doing that and how it affects the cell. So the first cell organelle is the nucleus, and this is similar to the nervous system. It stores DNA, which controls the synthesis of proteins. It also helps the cell when it's dividing. And the main thing is that most of our body is made up of proteins. So if something happens to the cell nucleus and the DNA that's within the cell, then the proteins won't fold correctly, and it can cause really disastrous things to happen, like cancer, or the cell to, it's called apoptosis, I think, where the cell will destroy itself because it's not built correctly. The next one is the endoplasmic reticulum and the ribosomes. So the ribosomes actually produce the proteins, not the organs, the proteins. And the endoplasmic reticulum is similar to the circulatory system and the digestive system. And I say that because it, while the smooth ER manufactures lipids and the rough ER produces proteins, which is similar to portions of the digestive system, it's then a transportation system. In the picture, if you can see the picture, it's this like set of tubes, the pink thing that's next to the nucleus. That's at the center of the cell. So they're just a bunch of tubes and they allow those things to travel through them. Then there's the Golgi apparatus, which is similar to the liver, and it looks like a stack of pancakes, as you can see from this lovely picture. And it processes the proteins that are produced in the endoplasmic reticulum and ribosomes and packages them into vesicles. Then there's the lysosomes. And the lysosomes are the green circles that are inside of this picture that are also next to the endoplasmic reticulum and the nucleus. And they're similar to the stomach, the upper digestive and lymphatic system. They break down toxic substances and waste, and they have enzymes in them. So they basically break down all those particles so that they can be transported out of the cell and keep the cell clean. Then there's the vacuoles, and those are similar to the kidneys, the lower digestive tract, and help with water and waste regulation. The vacuoles are, let me see if I can, they're the blue things. I've looked at so many different cell pictures and they're a different color on each picture of a cell, so I could always forget when I try to find them. So these are the vacuoles. And they do kind of look like kidneys. Okay, the mitochondria. This is the powerhouse of the cell. That's what almost everybody, if you say mitochondria, they remember the powerhouse. So it produces ATP, and it's similar to, I say it's similar to the heart, the muscular, and the digestive system. In one of the resources that I looked at, they said it's most similar to the muscular system just because it produces ATP. But I think because each one of these organelles is so complex, it does more than one thing. So of course it's going to act like more than one system in our body. So it's not perfectly identical, but it's close. Then there's the cytoplasm, which is similar to the blood or the extracellular matrix. It's a jelly-like matrix outside of the nucleus that contains all the other organelles. So that's this like light greenish color. Then we've got microtubules, and these are these, I think they look like pasta noodles here, but they're straw-shaped structures that give the nucleus its shape, nucleus and cell its shape, and it's similar to the skeletal system. And last but not least, and this slide is set up different because this is the area that we're going to be focusing on for the rest of the presentation. So this is this part of the cell membrane, which is also known as the plasma membrane. It's similar to the integumentary system, or you can simplify it to just be similar to the skin. And it consists primarily of a phospholipid bilayer, which means it's 2 layers of phospholipids. But it also contains other lipids, also known as fats, and proteins. And you can see in the picture here that the way they're set up, there's a phospholipid head, which is basically like that circular bluish thing. It's not quite circular in this picture, but in other ones, it's a circle. And then it has 2 fatty acid tails that are water averse, so they're hydrophobic. And what this does is it is it acts like a boundary in between the fluids that are inside and outside of the cell. So that it can control letting things in and out of the cell, like water, nutrients, and waste products. And you'll see in this picture, there's these like, they're proteins, but they're like complex folded structures. One's light blue, the other one's dark blue, then there's another one that's purple. So those are different things those are the proteins that are, excuse me. Hi, Tylee. We just got started, and we just went through all of the cell membrane, all of the cell organelles, and we just got to the cell membrane. And we have this recorded, so it will, I can share the recording with you afterwards, and then you'll be all caught up. So the cell membrane basically controls what goes inside and outside the cell. It's the bomb.com, and it's basically, it's the controller. It makes sure that bad things stay out, good things stay in. The waste products that are in the cell can get outside of the cell without making the cell toxic. Right. So this is another picture of the cell membrane, which you can see a little bit more clearly. Those red heads are the hydrophilic, the water-loving side, and then the hydrophobic side are the two little orange tails. Where's that yellow? You get what I'm saying. So then there's carbohydrates, there's phospholipids, and then there's protein channels. There's a lot, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on this cell membrane, and it's teeny tiny. So if you've ever seen like kind of a cross section of the cell, like of the skin, the different layers of the skin, it looks very similar to this, which I think is really interesting. So essentially, the cell is a microscopic version of us. Yes, the organelles look different, but they have very similar functions. And so they kind of behave in a very similar way as our entire structure, which I think is just amazing. So the most important things that a cell needs to survive are oxygen, nutrients, and the ability to eliminate waste. And then there are 3 ways to damage the cell. I'm sure there are more than 3 ways, but these are just the ways that we're going to talk about today. So damage to the cell membrane, that can be caused by GMOs or there is something, GMOs or not eating enough fats. So if you're not replacing your fats, then the integrity of the cell wall is going to, not cell wall, the cell membrane is going to suffer from that. So you're going to let things in and out that shouldn't be there. Damage to the mitochondria, that can happen through EMF exposure. So you might feel drained, fatigued, things like that, because you're not producing energy as efficiently as before the exposure. And then damage to the DNA, that can happen through dietary mutagenic chemicals, ultraviolet and ionizing radiation, and also heavy metals. Again, these are just a few examples of how the damage can happen. I'm sure there are others, but I just wanted to give you examples. Okay, so healthy habits that allow for oxygen the elimination of waste and toxins, and avoiding toxins and disturbances of the electrical functioning of the cells are the key to a healthy body. Excuse me, I will correct that grammar later. So activities that support the cell, things like breathing. We all know this. Taking enzymes with and without food. So enzymes with food are going to help you digest the food particles. So they're going to be smaller. They're going to be easily digested and absorbed through the digestive wall. And then get to the cells in a way where they're not enormous and the cell's not having to like break them down further. And then without food, those enzymes, if they're in, they'll get into places and they'll start breaking down old cells. They'll find different proteins, like protein casings around a parasite or protein casings around bacteria. So the enzymes will help clean up extra debris in the body if you take them without food. Using essential oils, which we'll cover more in depth later. Eating healthy fats, which we already discussed, that will help with the cell wall. I keep calling it the cell wall, the cell membrane, and then reducing toxin and EMF exposures. EMF is electromagnetic fields. And those come from things like cell phone radiation, smart TVs, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. So it's just these different electromagnetic frequencies that can disrupt other electromagnetic fields, which are us and all of our organs. So the cell receptor sites, what are they? Cell receptors are proteins either inside a cell or on its surface which receive a signal. In normal physiology, this is a chemical signal where a protein, I think it's pronounced ligand, but I've only ever read it. So ligand binds a protein receptor. The ligand is a chemical messenger released by one cell to signal either itself or a different cell. The binding results in a cellular effect, which manifests as any number of changes in that cell, including altering gene transcription or translation or changing cell morphology. Typically, a single ligand will have a single receptor to which it can bind, and cause a cellular response. There are several different types of cellular signaling, all of which depend on different ligands and cellular receptors. I know every time I read that, I'm like, wow, that's very dry. We'll go over it. So what are the cell receptor sites? They're proteins with complex folds, like we were showing earlier. And you can think of it like a lock and key. So the lock is the receptor, and the particle that binds to the receptor is the key. And then this relays a message inside of the cell. So the cell will do something based on what that message is. They'll either let the food particle in, they will, if it's a hormone that binds to the cell receptor site, it will do whatever the hormone tells it to do. So there's a lot of different messages that can happen, but those are the main ones. Ideally, this can connect perfectly. However, it can accept non-perfect fits too. That's what we'll get into next. So again, this is the cell membrane. You can kind of see how all this is set up with the protein channels, and there's different cell receptor sites. And all right. So this is a simplified version of cell receptors. So the different shapes represent the different protein folds and how they'll receive whatever particle or substance comes up to bind with it. So an ideal particle, the image on the left, is going to fit perfectly into, this is like a children's game when you've got like a square and you're trying to fit it into the square hole, and you realize that, oh, maybe the triangle can also fit into the square hole. That's the non-ideal particle. So just because the particle can fit into the space where it binds doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to have the response, the healthy response that we want it to. And this is how the cell receptor sites get all gummed up, because once that particle that's not supposed to be there gets bound to it, the cell never doesn't release it. It just holds on to it. So this happens. The example that I was taught was with like the genetically modified wheat. So what'll happen is the proteins look similar to what a wheat protein looks like, but it's not quite the right fit. So it'll link in there, but then once it's bound, the cell doesn't can't do anything with it. So then that cell receptor site is just offline until something comes to clean it. So in his book, The Chemistry of Essential Oils, David Stewart suggests that essential oils not only bind to, but clean cell receptors, noting that constituents of essential oils known as phenylpropanoids clean the receptor sites on the cells. Without clean receptor sites, cells cannot communicate, the body malfunctions, resulting in disease. One of the examples that I was given in school was also with insulin. So if the insulin sites get blocked because sugar beets are one of the major GMO foods, meaning that the genetically modified organism. So with sugar beets and with GMOs in general, they'll basically like shoot other DNA into their DNA, into the organism's DNA, and then that will create some sort of like new feature. So with sugar beets, they tried to combine it with some deep sea fish so that they would be less susceptible to freezing. It was not, luckily, it was not successful, and they never introduced this product into the food market. But that just goes to show like they're experimenting all the time with combining these different DNAs together, and it's basically like Russian roulette where they're shooting things and just like hoping for the best. They don't really understand how, when they turn different genes on, how that affects the cell, like how that affects the organism as a whole. And that's why so many more people are getting all these different food allergies, like to soy and wheat and stuff. It's because with the GMOs, it is distorting the different proteins of the cell, and the cell receptor sites don't know what to do with it. So we have 3 trillion cells in the body, and each cell has 60,000 cell receptors on it, which means there's 180 quintillion. And I wrote the number out with all the zeros, but like you can't really, it took up the entire slide. It went all the way across the page. So there's 180 quintillion. So we've got billion, then trillion, then I think it's quintillion, whatever the 4 is, and then quintillion, which is 5. So that's huge. That's 5 times, no, 500. I'm not that good at math. I'm not going to try to do this. So 180 quintillion cell receptor sites in the body. This is for the people that are really into essential oils and know all the stuff about it. Anybody else who just doesn't know that much about cell receptor sites, you can listen, but if you don't understand, don't worry about it. It's not gonna affect your understanding for the protocol. The major chemical components of essential oils include monoterpenes, esters, aldehydes, ketones, alcohols, phenols, and oxides, which are volatile and may produce characteristic odors. Different types of essential oils contain varying amounts of each of these compounds, which are said to give each essential oil its particular fragrance and therapeutic characteristics. So you'll understand on the next slide when I, not the next slide, but one of the subsequent slides, that there are different types of classification for each of the essential oils. And then they have different therapeutic characteristics based on what those chemical compounds are. So now for the essential oil protocol. It's a 3-week cell receptor protocol that will cleanse, repair, and reprogram the cell receptor sites on the cell. So week 1 is cleanse. And you're going to do 1 drop of 1 essential oil on each foot 1 time a day. I would recommend either morning or evening, just so that it's easy to remember. I've done it both ways, where I've done it in the morning and I've also done it at night. Personally, it's easier for me to remember at night. I just put the little bottle of essential oil next to on my nightstand. And then before I go to bed, I will put a couple of drops in my hand and put it on my feet. So week 1 is cleanse. That's where we're going to basically scrubbing bubbles clean the cell receptor sites. And these are your phenols. So that's going to be cinnamon, clove, oregano, etc. If you look online and you look up phenols, you can find more. I used clove, but you can pick whichever scent is your favorite under the phenols, but it needs to be a phenol. That's the most important thing, because its therapeutic characteristics will cleanse the entire the cell receptor sites. So week 1, 1 drop of essential oils on each foot, 1 drop of 1 essential oil on each foot 1 time a day. So that's week 1. Week 2, same thing. 1 drop, 1 essential oil on each foot 1 time a day. And you're going to pick, this is to repair the cell receptor sites. So once you've cleaned them, they may not be perfectly, they might have gotten damaged because they were bound to, something else. And, depending on the age of the cell, it could have been a really long, a long time. So you're going to pick one, sesquiterpenes. That's one of my teachers called it the holy sense. So it's the sense that they talk about in either the Bible or the Quran or Torah, just basically any of the religions that mention an essential oil. Those are probably going to be your sesquiterpenes. So that's sandalwood, frankincense, myrrh. Again, you can look these up online. I also saw the wise men as one of the options. So there's a bunch of different options. If you don't like sandalwood or frankincense, there's always myrrh. So Pick your favorite, and again, just one drop on each foot, one time a day. So that's week 2 of repair. Week 3, you'll reprogram. So just because the cell receptor site is clean and it's repaired, it may not necessarily remember what it's actually supposed to bind to. Um, I don't exactly understand that portion of it. I don't Part of this is like relaying how my teachers have instructed me, but I don't know exactly how it reprograms. Um, but I will look it up, and when I know, I will tell you all. But these are going to be monoterpenes. Krista, your citruses, that's where those are going to come in. So orange, lemon, lavender, not a citrus, but these are your monoterpenes. Again, you just pick one, whatever one's your favorite. I was thinking, since we're nearing like Christmas and the holiday season, it would be really cute to do like clover, cinnamon, and then I have frankincense, so I did frankincense, and then orange, and have that be like kind of like like a holiday scent trio for those of you that celebrate Christmas. So anyway, just a thought. Again, one drop of one essential oil on each foot, one time a day. After completing the 3-week protocol, you'll take 1 week off and then repeat if you want. You don't have to repeat. I the first time I did this, I did 3 protocols in a row. I didn't take a week off. I just did 3 weeks and then 3 weeks and then 3 weeks. And then I took a week off and I started doing it again. Listen to your body if you decide you want to do this. Great question, Mary. Where do we place the drop on our foot? I rub it into the whole foot, because of like the reflexology points that are on the foot. The foot is connected with the whole body. If you rub it into the whole foot, you'll hit every part of the body. And then, so if you want to do it like just do 1 3-week protocol, take a week off. You can take off as long as you want. Just listen to your body, because there might be some things that come up. So the body's major, like you might have some toxic reactions. So as you release toxins or whatever else is coming up. So the body's major avenues for eliminating toxins are the skin, the lungs and the respiratory tract, the bowels, and the urinary tract. We all know this. We have to eliminate some way. The lungs may not have been as common for people to maybe think about as the toxins. But if the lungs, the bowels, and the urinary tract, especially the bowels, if any of those get blocked, it will come out in the skin. So, like acne, rashes, different like nodules and stuff. Those can all be signs of like the body detoxing through the skin, and it's normal. If you're not pooping, that could be a problem, because the body will try to like flush toxins out through the bowels. So if you're not pooping, then they'll get flushed out through the skin. But there can be some other issues with that. So these are detox symptoms that might come up as you're doing this. Like I mentioned before, a rash, you might get like a common cold or some sort of symptoms. The common cold, we've been taught, is just kind of like, we being me and my classmates, is actually the body's way of just processing toxins. It's a totally normal response for the body. It's it's actually healthy to get a common cold about once a year. That's according to Chinese medicine. They think that it's a sign that your body is healthy enough to detox in that way. So you might have bowel movement changes, diarrhea, constipation, different quality, different colors, different textures. Anything could happen. If you haven't been paying attention to your poop, this now might be a time to start doing that just to make sure that, if you're detoxing too much too fast, then it'll show through your bowels. Or you might have an issue resurface. So, um, like I mentioned, if you struggled with acne, that might come back. Or literally, it could be anything because the body is so complex. There's so many different health issues that could arise. Um, anything could, anything is possible. Anything could come back up. If if that happens, you might be detoxing too fast, so you might want to like slow down. So maybe this was like the second or third week that you're doing the protocol, or as in the second or third time you're doing the entire 3-week protocol. Anyway, the second or third time that you're doing the 3-week protocol, whatever that is, just be mindful of it. See how you're feeling, and you can always slow it down. If you are not pooping, that is an issue, especially during just in general for your health. A supplement that you can take is magnesium. Magnesium citrate will help you go. It will help relieve constipation. A high dose of vitamin C as well will also help with constipation. So those are some additional options of things that you could try to see if it helps support you in this process. All right, we've got 5 more slides to go. So your physical body is made up of a community of 3 trillion cell citizens. As their mayor, do you think you'd be reelected? Oops, wrong way. All right. So we have about 15 minutes left.